Hi, my name is Monica Kretschmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Universal Women's Network and Woman of Inspiration Awards. And this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast, where we speak with women who are inspiring others locally, nationally, and globally. These are women of inspiration who ignore the naysayers and inspire others to dream big. So today, a very special guest on our show, which I'm so excited to be speaking with Miss Patricia Karen Gagic. She is our 2020 Woman of Inspiration Lifetime recipient this year. Now, in the green room, Patricia, welcome. You and I were speaking about all sorts of things. I love the conversations in the green room. That's my favorite part. Flicking on the switch of your favorite power song for one, sitting there, just connecting and talking about things. And so I'd like to really start with that achievement for lifetime. How did it feel being announced as a lifetime award recipient?
Well, first of all, Monica, I thank you so much for having this opportunity to be here today to talk to you. Lifetime, it is kind of surreal because you always think about, you know, the age attachment. And I think, okay, I don't feel that old. And yet when I look back to the things that I've accomplished, you have to have invested the time. You have to have, paid your dues. But I think more than anything, I think it flirts with the leadership aspect and the wisdom piece. Because when you go through life, you make mistakes, you recover, you learn your lessons, and you find yourself, sitting in a place where you become a mentor. You become a person who can sort of divulge. I did have aspirations, and they were probably very similar to ones that people have now, but I think I can bring that sense of accomplishment to a new level where, in spite of trials and tribulations, the big word, the big piece, and I think this is where, I love digging into it. It's the patience and
Mm.
it's the focus and just having clarity on what it is that you want to do with your life. Yeah.
So I have your my notes in front of me, and for those that are, you have just pages and pages and pages and pages of experience and wisdom that you've earned, that you've worked for, that you've crafted, that you've visualized, and you've achieved. And for those that are just don't know who you are or what you do, you are an artist, you are a visionary, you are a philanthropist. You've started this journey, and I want to go back to when you were 13 years old, right? Because there's some young listeners that are listening to this right now, which I think is really cool, where their parents are going, hey, listen to the wisdom of these amazing women. And so I want to go back to president of the CYO at age 13, breaking barriers for women in banking and staying steadfast in a male dominated world. At 13, you were already on a path for greatness. Did you know that at that time? And what started that calling for you at 13 to be such a trailblazer?
Wow. So the really, really interesting part about my life is that just before I turned 10 years old, we lived in London, Ontario, and it was when the JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis and the nuclear potential. And it literally was, a week and a half of crisis until JFK actually was able to resolve the situation. And I think at that time, I went downstairs to our basement where we lived, and there was, in the late 60s, they did create or build homes with, not just food sellers, but we kind of called it a bomb shelter.
Mm.
And I went in there with a pillow, and I was terrified because I knew we could maybe be obliterated from the earth, all of mankind forever. And it was shocking because, I'm less than 10 years old, and yet I have this great sense of importance and value of life.
Mm.
And I got on my hands and knees and I made a promise to God. I said, oh my God, please, please let us live, change the system, change whatever on the planet. I want to wake up tomorrow morning and know, we won't have to live in this little bomb shelter while the world is recovering, or we're going to die. And I did. I think that was probably the most impactful moment of my entire existence, because that set the course for me for the rest of my life. And of course, I got up the next day and, the treaty had been signed and everything had moved forward. And, Turkey and all the things that were happening between the two countries was starting to resolve. So I think that moment was the pinnacle of where you start your life. So I
Mm.
knew that I'd made that promise, and I had to manifest throughout my life, knowing that I had this deep-seated secret that I honestly felt like, because he had answered my prayers, that I was responsible, that the world had existed for the next, however many years. And in that innocence, I carried my promise. So yes, when I got into, you know, school and my spiritual life, I became a member of the CYO, the Catholic Youth Organization, and I became president at 13. And I took that so seriously, like I understood my responsibility. I created events, and there was, there's always a mentor. There's a person who makes a difference in your life. And it was Father Stanley Gambala at St. Stan's Church. And he literally said to me, I think the encouragement came also. He said, you're like, um, and again, I'm going to forget the name of the woman, Judy, back in that day, Judy LaMarche, maybe, I think was her name. And he said, you're just like her. You're going to be like the president of the world. You're going to be the prime minister. Not ever in my mind would I ever want that. But I think having someone who I respected so highly encourage me, that made me feel that I also had this, weight
Mm.
that I had to do something with my life. It was not to be just, go through day by day. I was always in that heightened sense of awareness. And I think that's where that little nudge, you know, pivoted, because once you've achieved that when you're 10 and 12 and 13, you
Mm.
do set goals and you do set your sights on things that, you know, maybe they don't all come to fruition. And of course, I think there is no free will, it is choice. So as we make our choice in life, we have to take responsibility for what comes next.
Mm. So powerful. I can't even imagine. Actually, I
Yeah.
can. I can imagine, but I'm looking at like the lifetime piece of it and where it starts. And, we talk about influencing our youth and getting them to really, be actively involved. Like we have a Youth Excellence Award now, thank goodness. And we've just
Yes.
actually introduced our 2017, we had a 8-year-old that had won the award. So Sophia is now part of our national ambassadors, but she's now 12, Patricia. So
Yeah.
looking at your story and the ability to know that, seeing that greatness in her, knowing that she's already on her path, it gives us such pride to be able to help her on that journey and have her become a part of that. I said, here's the program. I want you to help us build it. And she's like, okay. And so I really love, I mean, we're here at that place now, but to think about many years ago when somebody handed you that same baton, did you have a lot of a support? Like you had a few key people that were support, but did you have any resistance? Because that's very progressive for someone just to give that baton to a 13-year-old and said, go build it.
I love the fact that I can look back now and think, when I grew up, we had a party line on our telephone. We did not have cell phones. We wanted to communicate. We would go to the phone booth, and we would try and find somebody. So the world of media, which has now given rise to our ability to have such incredible exposure,
Mm.
it shifted, I think, the perspective that I had. So would I have thought at that age that I was unique? I grew up when hippies were part of the reality, and you had to make a choice, like, are you going to become the more conservative person in life, or are you going to have a little more exposure? I wanted to be a dress designer. And when I was in high school, I was very eccentric, and I dyed my hair different colors. I wore maxi and midi clothes before they were even fashionable. The yearbook stated, "She changes her hair color more than people change their clothes." That was a tagline. So I was part of theater arts. I had this um, expressiveness. But what's really crazy about me is that I was an extreme introvert. And I now know I'm a converted introvert, but that also plays into giving you a delightful way of seeing life, because the people who are coming at you have different perceptions. And so, did I have those support mechanisms, as you asked me? To a certain degree, no. I think I was just analyzing what was put in front of me and then making the best choice that I could. And my father and my parents were very loving. My father unfortunately died just after my 25th birthday, but he was my initial significant role model support. And again, when you think about how people come into your life, what are those values? So we had, my dad came from Austria, Hungary, Poland, in the Galicia area when he was 9 years old. And when they arrived to Canada, they literally lived in a cardboard box in Woodbridge in a field for 3 months.
Mm.
And his value system, he became an accountant, but he valued our trips, our weekends, our having lunch together, our Sunday dinners. He
Mm.
valued us taking, Easter holidays and driving somewhere every Sunday in fall. We would all get into the car and he would take us out to a country road where we would get out, and he would force us literally to find the most perfect leaves, maple leaves, elm leaves, whatever they were. And we would take them home, we would iron them in wax paper and literally, have those kinds of experiences. So I think my own inherent need for greatness, or you know, not financial freedom, but for the toys, wasn't as important
Mm.
as I had created this environment, or I had an environment created around me that gave me a love for humanity.
Mm.
So that, I think, became a really big part of how I made my choices and what became important to me. So my, spiritual life evolved into the karmic piece, where I really strongly feel that karma plays a huge part in what we do. And humanity, of course, is such a big part. But better than that, I love the mystery. I love the mystery of life. So the people who did not excite me in life, and I'll call it out, like boring people who just sat and just did their thing. I respected that. But I was always looking for, you know, the creative juice, the thing that would make a difference, and the musicality of life. So that,
So I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you and I have aligned so beautifully. I am very spiritual myself, so we can have a whole episode where we talk about spirituality. And I'd like to dive a little bit into that now with you. And then I think that we should have a whole entire episode where we really talk deeper into that, because I think people are exploring in that right now. If
mhm.
they haven't already experienced it, it's at a deeper level. And if people are it's resilience and rebuilding and chaos, they all touch into those levels where you want something bigger, and you know that something bigger exists outside of you. Excuse me. So I would love to actually, can you pinpoint? So 13, you already knew you're on a life's path. You're chosen to make an impact. That was your calling. When did you tap into that karmic spirituality, or really, because it wasn't talked about. It's still not talked about a whole bunch, right? Patricia, we're like,
I know.
20 going into 2021, and it's still not talked about a whole bunch. It's not mainstream conversation. And it's evolved a lot over the years. But when did you start really diving into your spiritual practice and knowing that what you had was a gift?
So going back to being, really young, my father, I think, brought to the equation that we were spiritual beings. I just have to call it out on that as well. There was just no question. We were more than just physical and, just empowered. So I went to church every Saturday to catechism and Sunday. But then when I got into grade 7, I went to church at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I sang in the choir from 6 to 6:30, from 6:30 to 7, from 7 to 7:30, and 8 to 8:30 every 5 days a week. And Saturday, I would sing at funerals. It was, I could not wait to be in the church, and I would go to 2 or 3 different churches. I had this really significant ability to want to sit in the presence of angels. I loved being up in the choir loft because the ceiling was all painted beautiful frescoes, but that became really important to me when my next door neighbor became a nun and went into the convent. I wanted to follow suit. I wanted to be the bride of Jesus. I wanted to be married to Jesus. I wanted to devote my life that way. And then I met a boy. So in high school, that ended my it ended my trip to the convent. And then that boy, his name was Gary, became my high school sweetheart. And in grade 13, which back then we had to complete, he made the decision to become a marine biologist, and he was going to buy a boat, go down to Florida Keys, sail through the Bermuda Triangle, and come back and then go to university. And of course, we would have a perfect life. Well, down in Florida, he got into some difficulty and did not return. So my entire hope and understanding of what my life was going to look like had now blown up. And I had to make some really strong decisions about who I was going to become. And more than anything, I looked at that as the karmic fracture, where everything had been so aligned, even though there were other problems. But that was the mystical piece where you'd met your Romeo and Juliet, where you understood something at such a deep level that you can't replace it. So how do you replace it? And that's where, other relationships came into play. I made the decision. We were not in a financial position for me to go to school at that time, at a university. So I wanted to get right into the bandwagon and get a job. So I became a teller. Well, a couple other little jobs, but I became a teller. And that's where I saw, this gentleman sitting in his office. And I thought, well, why are there no women in this banking thing? Like, I don't get that. What's so complicated about it? So I learned every single job along the way. So fast forward, at the age of 25, I am now married. I have a wonderful job. I am now a bank manager and one of the youngest and first. And I saw that spiritual side of me become questioned. So I started tackling the importance and relevance of the work I was doing, and I knew I had to serve humanity. So I made that as part of my journey. And then, being curious, I wanted to know about, of course, being a Catholic, I wanted to know about other religions. So I began studying Buddhism, and I started looking into the Kabbalah, the Judaic, learning the teachings of the Tanya, the Maimonides, and I really, really got focused. And I studied physics, and that tapped me into learning the alphabet, and I wanted to know more about the ethno-linguistics of language. A whole explosion of life, because then you start tying each of these different aspects of religions together. And the golden rule, it really truly existed. And then how do you become a better human being? And then I think the biggest lesson is, are you on a path? And that trigger is your path to create wealth, and is the path going to serve you and give you the happiness and joy? Along the way, a lot of tragic things happened in my life. In fact, significant tragedy. My mother was assaulted coming home from work one day. My husband's brother was in an accident and became a quadriplegic. And so we had to shift again all of our lifestyle and be able to manifest support and emotional support, and then your own growth. And, we go through these periods of time in our life when you are aware of your responsibility and your role as a human, but not always are you able to fulfill it. And my other side, of course, being creative. I love drawing. I wanted to paint. I wanted to flourish in that environment. But I also had this serious addiction with business. So I was wearing two hats and living, trying to accomplish both. Yeah.
And you make it sound so easy, Patricia. You make it sound so easy, but I look at the art. I'm drawn to the art in the background. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that piece. You talk about your journey and your responsibility now as, a wife and a mother, and then, caretaker, and you still got your creative piece. You're drawn to that. When did that actually evolve? Like, when did you actually really start honing your talent for your as an artist?
Well, when I was about 2 or 3, I was drawing Elizabethan ball gowns. I have no idea. I never saw one, didn't know. My mother couldn't figure out how would I have, this concept of the puffy sleeves and the big ball gowns. So the drawing thing was always there. Not until I would think it would be maybe when I was about 19 or 20 that I picked up a pen and I started doing these really sort of unusual drawings. And I thought, okay, like they're not making any sense, but they just continued to go into, my pattern. And after I was married, my husband was really, really aware of my addiction to art and wanting to go to every gallery and, all my art books. So he bought me a set of watercolor, and I started painting watercolor, and I loved it. And then fortunately, I continued to do things on my own. We were laughing the other day because I had entered a juried contest, oils, and I had painted these 2 or 3 really large abstract oil paintings. And we drove up to the place where the jurying was going to be done, and my paintings were wet. The oil was still wet, and I had to ask everybody not to touch my paintings because they were still wet. And they're all looking at me like, you have no clue what you're doing, do you? I didn't know how to add things to dry them because I was still in my other world. But fortunately for me, in 1999, through a trip to France, and it was all synchronicity. The story's kind of cute. I went to get the keys for the house in the place is called L'Abigu de Mazingue. And the gentleman had a beautiful home, and he asked me if I wanted to see his art collection. And I did. And I saw this painting on the wall of this abstract horse. And I looked at the name on the painting, and it said Dragic, which my husband's Serbian. So I said, oh, it's Dragic. And he said, no, 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 it's Dragic. And he's in Savoyon in Mont Ventoux, France. And I went, wow, that's like where I'm going. And I don't know whatever possessed me, but that's the karma piece and the mystery. And I said, I'd love to meet him. And he goes, oh, no, 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 he's eccentric. He doesn't meet anybody. You will never meet him. And I'm like, okay, challenge. So when we got to France, they were able to communicate with him, and he said no, he didn't want to meet an American, North American. And I thought, no, this is now getting really intense. I had no idea what had ever possessed me to to want this so badly, to want to meet this person. But I saw there was just something in that painting that I knew whoever the mind of a person who would paint something like that intrigued me. And
Mm,
that I think is why the concept of it needed to be something, you know, and I'm there and I'm in France. It's my first time to be there. So of course I want to meet him. So I did go, and we were late because you could take two exits up to Mont Ventoux, and we took the wrong one, which added 2.5 hours to our day. He was not impressed. But anyways, when we got there, he gave us the time, and he doesn't speak English. So in my poor French and my husband's Serbian, we were able to communicate. And then after, on our walk back to the car, he said, I don't teach people. I will give you a week, but you need to speak French better. So I took 33 hours of private lessons, and I was able to converse with him. We did arrive, and it wasn't just the 1 week. I ended up becoming his student. And so 21 years of training with him, he considers me now to be a master. We accomplished the Matisse palette, which was handed down to him by his mentor, and many trips to um, see his exhibits. And then he and I actually ended up having an exhibit. I think it was 2014 or 2013. We exhibited together, which was really a highlight for me in my life. So that it, but it's sacrifice, and it's um, intensity and focus and clarity, and the sacrifice is the big thing,
mm,
because you have to give up all the worldly things around you to understand what it is that you want so badly, which is the full expression of yourself.
mm.
And you know the inclination to want to go off and do other things, it's just gone. The desire is almost so overwhelming that you have no other. It is your existence, it's your oxygen. So,
Wow. What a story. I just love love that story. And I hope that the listeners are just as mesmerized as I am, because I think that is truly the secret sauce, Patricia, between fulfillment and passion and alignment. This is that story sums everything up. What people really just, they're like, what is that sign? Well, sometimes the sign is there, but you have to act on it.
oh, it's that synchronicity, Monica. There's, it's paying attention. So, when we were just talking about, um, you know, what changes you make in your life as you want to enter into a deeper understanding of life. And I was fortunate to meet certain people here in our community. And I was part of the Center for Compassion and the Lama Yeshe Ling group, sat on the board for a while. But I devoted enough time to opening my eyes to mindfulness and meditation. And I went to the University of Toronto, and I did both their applied mindfulness and their transformative mindfulness program. There were two 3-year programs, which I completed, and Mindfulness Without Borders. All the while, I am doing my art and business. So it is, no one's going to hand you anything in life unless you come from royalty stock, or you come from a family of wealth that can, provide for you. When you start at a really zero base, you have to make a decision. What do I want my life to look like? How do I want to see it as being? For me, every single second, every moment in between the moments is the experience. That's my joy.
Mm,
So I don't have this, I live very altruistically because I want to give back. I am grateful for all that I have, but I also know there is no cessation of suffering unless you are part of making the the choice to help other people, to guide other people, to maybe not everyone's going to buy into, not having things or giving things, but that's not really the problem or the question. So right now, the transparency to be that transcendental, that's the realism. So when I wrote Inspired to be Rewired, Mastering the 5 Radical Degrees of Life, which are risk, root, remedy, realization, and reality, those were the triggers for me to say, that's my mantra. And if I'm going to help people, then I have to constantly remember how I can execute that. And it becomes visible in my own actions. It becomes visible in what I offer people. And now the piece of being aligned with my own truth, with those values. And, does it get you everything you want in life? What is it you wanted when you arrived? You were birthed. So you have the option to create all the moments in between. And when you start to realize that you are the only person in control, and I did suffer, and I had a lot of the karmic pieces around my life that I had to really resolve and find a point of gratitude for. But becoming detached is the detachment to that suffering, the detachment to the causes of that suffering are all ego-based anyways. So you have to really come to a place of clarity with who you are and accept those things around you so that you can become more efficient, more proficient. Yeah.
You've accomplished a great deal, Patricia, but I have a feeling this is, from speaking with you and the many conversations that we've had, this really is truly only the beginning, even though you have a lifetime of knowledge and wisdom to share. So let's talk about that piece, and we talked about lifetime as being, is that the ceiling, or is that now just the door to really amplify all of those wisdom and learning and experiences and share it with the world?
So I love that, because I want to say, I feel like in our truth, we are only here in this second. So it's only our concept, our preconception, our preconceived feelings and understanding of what took place. And then how did you put a value on that? So if, owning a 5,000 square foot house is your goal, and you actually can achieve that goal, when you get there, are you happy? Is this the divine discontent because we have there's no judgment, or there's no scale. It's, you have to define that scale of what it is that's going to make you happy. And I think if you're not on a path, you can't be happy. You have to be on a path somehow to bring that sense of contentment to you. There's this quote, I have a few that I like, but Blaise Pascal said, "All man's ills come from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone." So for me, I feel like I know how to sit in a room alone. I've had to. The only thoughts are my own. Are they influenced by other people, or are they influenced by the circumstances, around me? But it's my decision to allow the emotion and what I'm going to do with that in that moment. So I do not want to suffer. It does hurt to see people suffer. And I think when people suffer for losses and things that can be replaced, that's different. If you can't replace a life. You cannot replace another human being. So that suffering has to be converted to a loyal love of humanity, and that you have lessons learned and you have memories. So I don't know if I answered your question, because I got into a little tangent. Sorry.
No, I'm just, as I said, that I think the word is mesmerized when I listen to you talk about your philosophies, about your visions, about your accomplishments. It's very rooted, and I like that word, rooted, in purpose. And so I think for the listeners, when they listen to this entire episode, I hope that they're taking out those nuggets of wisdom that are so deep with purpose. So no matter where you are in your life, it builds on hope, right? It gives people hope, right? And I really love how we're coming out of COVID, and there's so many great things. I just look at all of the opportunities, and I look at it as being such a blessing, right? And I look at things that have happened, and maybe we can share with the audience some of the things that have happened through COVID, for you, that have been let's just say you've had some really unique experiences, and accolades happen. So maybe if I can have you share a little bit about that resilience muscle and COVID experience from your perspective.
Well, I have a few thoughts on that. Well, with respect to COVID and this period of time, oh, one of the other passions that I have is my work in Cambodia. So back in 2006, there's always a backstory, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about that. But I was in a position to make a decision on supporting the building of a library in Angkor Wat, which would be the first time after 25 years of difficulty politically during the time of the Khmer Rouge. A lot of the Buddhist and the Cambodian folklore, all the books were burned. And there is a group of monks that buried them in the stupas underground. And so in 2006, they wanted to bring them back out, rewrite them, and have a library. And the Cambodian government wanted to shut down the little orphanage and the children that were running around in the jungle there, because it was an eyesore. UNESCO was coming in, Sweden, Japan. They wanted to take the sandstone, limestone structures in Angkor and rebuild them because of the damage. So Master Kailan, who was the gatekeeper of Angkor, said if he had a library, then they wouldn't shut him down, and he could continue to look after the children, and he could also have a beautiful place that people would want to be drawn to come. I helped him. So we built this library. And then in 2007, I went to Cambodia and I saw the damage and the devastation from the time of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. And I said, what can we do to change that? And I had an incredible karmic connection to Master Kailan. So we worked on this project and we did build a school for the monks. And now fast forward, we're in 2020. And I've now partnered with Serena Buffalino, who also had a calling in Haiti. And so we have, www.helphealhumanity.org, where I'm creating macro schools in Cambodia. We're doing this new work. We are partnering with Rotary to bring, more change and support both there as well as in Haiti. So that piece has been really encouraging because these macro schools are not expensive and we can actually employ people, we can educate people with life skills. So that's important. In terms of my art, the Art Tour International magazine named me as Artist of the Year 2020. My work was on the cover of the magazine, which I think I have right here, and I'll just throw it up. So that's my painting on the cover. I also received the Pewter Medal from the Academic Society Art Sciences and Letters in Paris, which is a really significant acknowledgement of an artist's work. I did receive the silver medal in photography from them 2 years earlier, and I had received the gold medal at the Salon National Beaux-Arts in Paris at the Carrousel du Louvre. And I'm the first female Canadian to ever receive that award. So it's like breaking through some ceilings. There are a few other things going on, but I think most important is I'm also in the process of writing my new project, which is the Karmic Art Experience. So Monica, it's like taking the art and taking the mindfulness piece and then all of the things that I have, been lucky enough to have come my way and my choices beyond that. And what I'm hoping to do is not make people painters or become really great artists. If they do, that would be great. But more so, and it's not art therapy, it's an experience to actually become so aware of what you do in the moment, and then take all of these years of my studies with my mentor Dragan and expand them so that you actually come through sort of like the dark night of the soul in a very unique way. So that's sort of a really good result for me. I'm also part of Synergy, which is with Giovanni Marsico, the Archangel Academy, and I'm boasting about the opportunity to be, alive in this, time in life and to have met these wonderful people. So there's still a lot of work. I'm writing The Black Snowflake. I'm writing Thirsters and Quenchers. I'm doing a rewrite on my book, Karma and Cash. And those are while people can look at sometimes another person's life and say, oh my gosh, you're so lucky, you don't have to do this, this, and this. I look at it and say, but again, what is your choice? How much do you value your precious gift of life? Yeah.
I'm in awe of everything that you've accomplished. And one thing that has been very important to you is mentorship. I'd love to really talk about that piece of mentorship and bringing together that circle of support hers in our world.
Yeah.
I truly believe that we can't accomplish anything alone. We need a team, a village, an army of those people around us at all times. And I'm really happy that you're one of those people, that has come into our world and, and welcome you as a national ambassador for the Universal Women's Network. We are so excited to have your wealth, your knowledge, your being a part of helping us, build, grow, scale our message. That's super exciting times to have that collective wisdom behind us in truly elevating our network and our purpose to a whole new level. So
it's a solid it's a solid answer, which is well, it's actually not one word, it's two. So for me, it's coherence and collaboration. And I think, what coherence is sticking together. And I know I think about that in art. My paintings have to have coherence. Each part has to become a story that manifests inside, the final and complete piece, which is a statement. But then collaboration is when everything that's not going in the direction you hope it is, you seek out how can I redefine it? How can I manage it? How can I add betterment to it? And without blamation, no blame. And that is the piece that I think makes a difference. So in mentoring, you do have honest capabilities. And it's saying, am I going to be better off sitting on a beach, drinking a, whatever, or could I sacrifice even 1 or 2 hours of my time a week or a month to have a conversation with somebody who is motivated for their own betterment or for their own life? There are people out there who are, oh my goodness, like so happy just to be in their own bubble, doing what they're doing, maybe having their children, devoting their time to their family. And that is unbelievably beautiful because that's their path. They've made the choice. But the people who sit on the fence and complain, I want to knock you. I want to knock you and say, go find your mentors. Go find those people who have accomplished what you think you can't accomplish. because I'm like your story from scratch. None of this has happened because I got all these things given to me. I suffered. I had to go through my, my tests, these examinations of, if this isn't working for me, what do I have to do to make it better or change it? Who can I go to help me? 7 billion people on the planet. Hello. I mean, there are people out there who can assist you, who can make you feel if it's important, or give you the skills, or even talk you down. There's always this, I want to reach for this, big, epic moment, and I'm down here. You do have to recognize that life is a weave, and the doors will be opened and doors will be closed. And maybe what you want might in your mind look like that's what you want, and you get there and you're not happy. A lot of people make career shifts, changes. They get into, I know quite a few people actually in the profession is law. I have 2 friends who both became lawyers that absolutely do not want to be lawyers. One is litigation, thought that that's where they would be super happy, and now they're completely moving into she's actually going to do real estate. So I know. So I think if you have frustration, or you are indecisive about your world and what you're doing, then you have to put yourself on pause and, do that. Here's the big T, here's the one side, and here's the other side, right? And what do you want to bring to the table that can make a difference? Yeah.
So once again, mentorship, advisors, support hers, golden. They really help us elevate. Doesn't mean that we have to do our own work. I look at all of the accomplishments that you've achieved. You're one of the hardest working persons I know. We talked about, what are you doing on Sunday? What are you doing on Sunday? And the Sunday was full, and it was full, but of things that you're really working your life's plan towards, that are deeply meaningful to you. So like every single second is accounted for, and in your life's work, I see such deep purpose there. So it's really inspiring, and people look at somebody that's achieved such greatness, or achieved a lot of things in life. It never ever happens without hard work.
No, but you have to be satisfied, I think, with exactly where you are. And if you can be, then every single thing you do moving away from this particular moment is in your own frame of reference. It's in your ability. So that's where I think that little mystical piece of your mind, know your mind really well, do the work. It's very easy, as I said, blamation. I mean, oh my goodness, we blame so many things on outside as opposed to the inside. And I think that's a trigger for people to say, okay, what am I saying, and why? What's my why? Yeah.
So true. And I am looking forward to the journey ahead. I know that you're part of our 2021 Woman of Inspiration book, 100 Woman of Inspiration, that we will be elevating, revealing the book, International Women's Day, and then the roadshow that will happen across Canada, which is mind-blowing, considering that half of Canada right now is locked down. We're doing it, and it's a truck, and it's a graphics truck, and we are going across Canada and going to really have those conversations about how to elevate women to be seen, heard, and valued. Bringing men to the conversation. I know that you and I have had many chats about that and the importance of our male allies. So maybe you can share a little bit about, what excites you the most about that piece.
Well, again, having the mentors that I've had in my life has given me that sense of equanimity. I think if we want to talk about anything, and there's diversity, there's a lot of judgment that goes on in the world. And right now, if people can deservedly extend their own lives into a place where there is equanimity, and that goes for men and women, to extend, the olive branch if there's a difficult situation, having that forgiveness piece, it just clears the air. It opens up, the door for us. I had challenges when I worked for the bank and in my property management business with a lot of the people I had to deal with were male. And I think you have to just say to yourself, if I'm here, I'm meant to be here.
Mm.
And then play the cards. The other big word, which I think, and you'll agree because you do this very well, is listen.
Mm.
People are always going to tell you exactly how they feel. If you hear it, if you can listen, and then you absorb that and you react to it in a way with equanimity, without judgment, that will make a big difference as well. And that male female piece oftentimes gets, butt headed because we bring stubbornness, or we bring that ethic that we stand for, but we're just not resilient enough to bend or to twist or to give permission for the other person, or do you even hear the other person?
Mm.
So I think listening is a big part of what we need to do.
And just being able to provide the opportunity that is, like you say, it's non-judgmental.
Yeah.
So right now people's voices are being stifled because there's lots of things being talked about that nobody wants to offend anybody. So because they don't want to offend anybody, they don't actually say anything. And if they don't say anything, then we can't kind of move forward. You have to be able to express and truly be willing to express what you're feeling without the fear of being judged. I think it's really important.
But it's what is your intention? What is it you want to accomplish? And in a little way, or sorry, in part of what you're sharing, there is the intention of scaring people.
Mm.
It's like, what is the actual motivation behind that? So you have to be able to evaluate the information that you're receiving and determine whether or not it has an impact on you, or whether it's in its truth. Because oftentimes, we're just given so much false information, and we live in that fear, false evidence appearing real, that acronym. So I think if you pay attention and you try to resolve, your self-conflicting thoughts, you will be able to resolve things much easier. Yeah.
Mm. Well, I am looking forward to many, many more conversations, Patricia. And it's been an absolute great interview with you. We covered a lot of territory. There
I know.
is so much material in here for people. I hope that, you know, people enjoyed learning so much about the depth of your journey and your story and how they can apply some of those own principles to their own lives. And I really enjoyed learning some of these bits and pieces of your story that I've heard only for the first time. So that for me is really exciting, to learn more about you. And I think that as humans, we're like this onion, right? And there's so many delicate layers of the onion. So what we see as an individual and all of these accomplishments, there's just so many layers and layers and layers of onion. So thank you for peeling back so many of those layers for us today. It was truly a pleasure to speak with you. And I know that this won't be the end of our conversations. This is the Woman of Inspiration podcast. So it wouldn't be the 1 Minute of Inspiration podcast if I didn't ask, who is your woman of inspiration, Patricia?
Oh, wow. So, of course, I'm going to put you up on the pedestal there. You are certainly, without a doubt, you know, a grand inspiration to so many women. So gratitude to you. Um, I don't know. There are so many. Um, yeah, I'm almost. It's like being tongue tied because it's unfair. I feel like it's unfair to just pick one person.
Mm.
Um,
How about your definition? Because I can relate to that, your definition of a woman of inspiration probably sums that all up.
Flawlessly dedicated to her path. I think in a simple definition, to me, I feel like I have tried to be, if I take myself as my own inspirational, guide, I have been aware of my ability to say, play the other side.
Mm.
Just see the fun in it, see the humor in it, see, there's only two outcomes. It's either right or it's going to be wrong. So what's the difference? Do you get more joy on one side than the other? Perhaps, but then you have a lesson to be learned then. So it's always just looking at it, with clear eyes. Yeah. There's a book called The Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes. And it's interesting, that little simple concept of, we all hear that voice in our head, right? You hear that voice. Well, going back, that was, witches were burned at the stake because they said, that she's a crazy person, that she has that voice. That's that bicameral mind. And I think we have to pay attention to that as our intuition.
Mm.
And if there's another voice or a mentor or a person who, really exemplifies that, then I have to say all of the archetypes, all the goddesses, all the heroines, they are the special people. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I see you as, of course, a woman of inspiration, the ones that are willing to take the path that's less traveled and be open and willing to carve that new space. Those are the women of inspiration that surround us each and every day. And you were definitely one of those women. And I'm so honored that you've taken this time out of your day to have a chat with us and share your wisdom, because it's truly special when one can be so open and authentic because we did cover a lot of territory and a lot of subjects that aren't mainstream yet, and I hope that we can together push that envelope to have and raise the awareness for that. And I'm sure that when your book comes out, the karmic in cash, is it the karmic in cash?
It's Karma in Cash.
Karma and cash. I'm already saying that's going to be a huge success because there's all ties,
Mm,
to how we perceive money, how we deal with money, karma.
yeah.
I can't wait for that book to come through.
So Monica, just as you said exactly that, I thought to myself, it's not a real person character, but it's from a movie. And the movie is Doctor Strange, and with what's his name? Benjamin Cumberbatch, I think. But the character in the movie is the Ancient One, and she plays the divine role. And I think, if I think about being influenced, I've watched that movie probably 7, 8 times. You can never get enough of the Supreme One. So yeah,
Mhm. Okay, so
influence.
what's the name of the
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange? Okay, Netflix. Would that be a Netflix?
It used to be, but you can find it. Yeah, you can easily find it.
Okay, so that's on my list now.
There you go.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
So, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this amazing conversation with our Woman of Inspiration 2020, Patricia Gagic, who is an artist. She's a philanthropist. Um, she's touching so many lives across the world, and I look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Patricia, where can people find out more about you, keep updated on all of the work and projects that you're working on?
I would like to send people to my website, which is www.patriciakarengagic.com. And then with respect to the other work, it would be helphealhumanity.org. And I also sort of play with inspiredtoberewired.com. So,
Okay. Well, I'm going to put those in the notes. So everybody listening, those will be in the notes. So be sure to check that out and learn more about the journey. And of course, be prepared to see Patricia live, on the road show, because there'll be lots of ways to get in touch. We've got some interesting, really, really game-changing ideas on working with you through that. Some surprises that we'll only share closer to the event, but I'm super excited for 2021 and the amazing lives we're going to change together. So thank you, Patricia, for your time today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And please do share the podcast. That's, if you loved us, share us and with your networks, and get in touch with all of the Women of Inspiration. And until next time, have a great day. Thank you.